So what I am trying to do is a limb independence exercise that uses polyrhythms. And it's something I can't honestly remember if I borrowed it from someone or came up with it in a fever dream. But the idea is that this is something to teach you limb independence, to train your limbs to work independently, which is, of course, essential in piano playing. But I'm particularly interested in it because I want to improve my blues improvisational playing. And so much of that music entails keeping a rhythm section going with your left hand while you do something melodic with the right. And which is really great if you're just by yourself, you don't have anyone to accompany you, a bass guitarist or a drummer. You've got that with your left hand, but it also creates a challenge because you've got to be your own rhythm section and keep that rhythm, but also do stuff with your right hand that is, although it is synchronized to the time of the left hand, it's independent in terms of what it does, the lines, that you create and so forth. So the idea is that you've got to work yourself out of this habit of always doing with the right hand what you're doing with the left hand and so forth. And it gets really tough when you've got a certain rhythm going and you have to create phrases that fall outside of that rhythm. And really the only way, this is a challenge for example, singers who accompany themselves. And the only way to do this is practice and start slow. You cannot do it at speed. You'll never learn it if you sit down and listen to a song and just try to do it at speed. It's not going to happen, or at least I'm not capable of doing that. Maybe other people are. So the idea is that you're maintaining a kind of, if you want to do this exercise, you will have to have progressed far enough so that you've at least got a handle on the kind of basic left hand shuffle rhythm for the blues, right? And I'm just doing a C5, C6. I mean, you'll find a million videos on YouTube about this. I'm not a teacher, by the way. I'm just an amateur trying to figure this out. So that's a triplet rhythm, and it uses the C5 and the C6. So it's based on a pattern of repeating threes and sixes. And if you want to try to play over that, your kind of inclination is to your body wants to do everything at the same time. So you have to train yourself out of that. And something I hit upon, which is an exercise that will make you curse your parents for having brought you into this world and given you life. It is very painful. Certainly at the start, the limb independence exercises are difficult and slow going, and you just have to stick with it. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll take weeks, months. This is a process. So the exercise is really simple. You've just got this shuffle rhythm based on triplets, based on a structure of 6. And you want to choose a right-hand pattern, a right-hand sequence of notes that is not 6. It could be 4. The hardest thing to do is to choose an odd number. And when you do that, with any number that is outside of 6, creates a kind of cycling pattern where the left-hand pattern of 6s goes out of sync with the right-hand pattern of, let's say it's 5s, and has to repeat a certain number of times to come around and re-synchronize. And that is, I come from a drumming background. I'm not a good drummer either, but at least I have experience. And that is, in drumming, we talk about displacement, where you might have a typical 4/4 count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, standard kind of rock and roll beat. The 4 on the floor is 1 is the bass drum and 2 is the snare drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that's your 4/4 pattern. And so you can lay that over 6, and it will sort of go out of sequence and then come back into sequence. And what you're doing then, if you are playing, let's say, to continue my example, I'm a bit scattered today, I'm sorry. If you are playing a song in 6/4 time and you create a 4/4 rhythm, it's both within the beat and out of sync of the beat. It's much more evident in a case where you have, let's say, the famous one for a polyrhythm in the jazz world, of course, is Take 5, Dave Brubeck. And that song is in a 5/4 pattern. But however, my point was about displacement. And this is something that drummers like Stuart Copeland do, where they sort of shift everything over by a quarter note. And it's totally just, it has this incredibly visceral, discombobulating effect. I love it. It's one of the things that made Copeland famous. His displacement, because suddenly you don't know where the one is. You don't know where the kind of anchor of everything is, and yet there's a rhythm happening and it's still driving you along. And then there's often, this is often used in such a way that it's suddenly revealed. Where the one is revealed, it resolves, maybe in the transition from the verse to the chorus or something like that. And it's massively powerful. So displacement. But the idea with displacement is that you take a rhythmic sequence of a certain number of notes and you shift it over, and you thereby create a certain aesthetic effect. But the problem for the player when you do that is you have to relearn that pattern when you shift it over. Your body, even though it's the same sequence, your body understands it differently and really struggles to kind of grasp it. It's suddenly something different. It's very much like displacement in tempo is very much like modality in melody. That is that you're changing with modality. You're changing the key. You're taking which means that you can take an existing musical structure, transpose it into another key, and that same structure is retained, but it has a totally different aesthetic effect. So, this is so long-winded all of a sudden. So here's the idea, and I'm going to play this, and I'm not going to master it, and that's the point, because you will go through this too. And I'm not at the point where I can show you a perfect Instagram-worthy video of, oh, look at that, wow, because that's not really authentic. I could do 100 takes, and on the 100 takes, get it, but that won't tell me anything. What really tells you something is when you fail, so you're about to watch a grown man fail. So I'm going to try a polyrhythm of 5, or sequence of 5. So it's a 5/6 polyrhythm. I already messed it up. So let's slow it down. What you can do as you do this is you will notice, pay attention to your body, these moments where you tense up. And that's the moment where your brain is trying to get your hands to do what they're supposed to do, but your brain is struggling because the patterns it knows don't actually help it to, do what you're trying to do. And so, at least for me, this is what I've experienced. Again, I'm not a teacher, but I'm just going from my reflections. That in those moments, what you discover is your body is telling you where you haven't mastered the passage or whatever, because you get tense. And as soon as you get tense, that flow thing disappears. You become too self-conscious. There's too much brain processing power going into figuring out, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? And it just falls apart. Basically, if you're learning something, you're always at the edge, and you have a finite amount of kind of brain processing power that you can apply to this thing that you're trying to learn, because a bunch of that energy is going into training your brain rather than simply doing the task. And this is why you need to think about music or learning any skill in terms of a process, not in terms of end result. And it's on that note that I wanted to shift into kind of a few, hopefully brief reflections on what I'm doing here, who I am, what is this all about. I'm an amateur musician, and my YouTube channel is based on the idea of the amateur, someone who's not a professional, and very interested in the idea in what the process of learning looks like, and how kind of humbling it is, and truthful it is, because it teaches you exactly what you know and what you don't know, exactly what you're capable of and what you're not capable of. And for me, doing this, putting process videos up rather than an end product video, was enormously enlightening for me. It gave me a huge boost of self-confidence because I realized that I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be a classical concert pianist, a professional, working at that level. I have no desire to do that. I'm not built to do that. I'm also not an expert musician. I am on the piano. I started playing about a year and a half ago. So at the age of 50, I'm 51 now. And some people have said, oh, you made a lot of progress in a short amount of time. I had many advantages. One was that I did learn music in grade school, which I forgot and had to relearn, however many decades later. But having that foundation still kind of there accelerated things. A huge advantage is that I live with someone who is far more advanced, a musician on the piano and singing and other things than I am. And so I have the advantage of daily exposure to someone who is quite a bit ahead of me, and to be able to learn, just watch and learn how they approach learning a piece, what their technique is. Of course, they were there to endlessly answer my questions. They had formal training that I lacked. So that's a privilege right there. That was an enormous privilege. And the takeaway for you is that you need to find musicians and just hang out with them and try to jam. So that was an advantage as well. The other advantage is just the great age that we live in. When I was a kid, there was no YouTube. There was no, it was hard to build a community of musicians, particularly if you were isolated. But now, I post something on the internet and, people from all over the world can respond to it. So my philosophy behind doing this is to kind of be the I don't mean this in a critical or antagonistic way. I guess what I mean to say is I will never be an Instagram musician who has perfected their skills to such a level as to be able to deliver a sort of flawless performance that becomes a benchmark for their viewers. And there are so many of those people that I admire and absolute awe of. I follow many of them. I constantly learn from them, and I am just grateful to them for their generosity in sharing their skill and knowledge and the beauty of their art with the world. But I'll never be one of those people, and I just can't work that way. Basically, my thing is improvisation. That's the skill. I know that's a strength I have. What I don't have is memory. Excuse me. What I don't really have is an interest in memorizing a long, elaborate piece and performing it note for note. To me, that would be hell, and I would never do it. And so what I realized when I first started recording music videos, these sorts of videos rather of process practice, is the early ones I would take 50 takes to try to get a perfect performance, and it was not fun. It was work, and it was just, the whole thing was unpleasant. And what I slowly realized, it was also not particularly honest, because what I was showing the world was my best take out of 50, not how's Ryan today? What is he doing? What's he working on? What challenges does he have? What state is he in? So right now, I have sleep issues. I haven't had a lot of sleep, and I have a pounding headache. And so the challenge I set myself is, can I make a video that is at least halfway coherent? that explains this exercise and also sort of explains a bit of my thinking behind the videos. And that's what you've gotten. I want this to be as open as possible, and hopefully other people will be inspired to post their videos and not worry about having it to be perfect. My thinking is it should be easy. You should be able to sit down without fear, without having to work yourself up. Just start playing. Stuart Copeland, in his drum studio, or his music studio, which he calls the Sacred Grove, he has all kinds of wonderful musical instruments in it. And he composes his music for film in this space, and it's just glorious. But he has it mic'd up for sound at all times. So whatever he's playing, he can just start playing, and there's no barrier to that, to just the inspiration flowing. And I think that's a good principle. To figure out how can you make playing easy and pleasant, and so that it's easy to access as well. Anyway, I've gone on for long enough. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Thanks to all the musicians out there who are just such an amazing inspiration, and who embody a spirit of generosity that almost moves me to tears. So thanks, everyone.